of the day, and welcome to yet another exciting series in the Chief Auditor series. We have a very exciting speaker today, to whom I will introduce a bit later. The Chief Auditor series is directed to bring into place vast experience and knowledge of chief internal auditors of various big companies. We have today, of course, Sudeep Dey, who will enlighten us further on this. The idea is to bring academicians, scholars, chief auditors, and all stakeholders in this series, which will continue for a while. Dibji, few words.
I think this journey has been fantastic. When we have embarked on this journey to have presentations and deliberations with chief auditors across the country so far, and maybe even abroad later on, what we find is something good is coming out of it. There's such a lot of learning, even for both of us. There's such a lot of learning from each chief auditor who speaks about what they do. And this short session of 40-45 minutes is really going to be helpful to the internal audit fraternity.
Let me now introduce Sudipta to all of us. Sudipta Dey is the head of audit at Nestle Continental East and South Asia region. He is a chartered accountant by profession and started his career in 1989 with Pricewaterhouse in the audit division. Since 1990, he has worked in the FMCG sector. He was with Shaw Wallace, learning the intricacies of sales operations and finance in the North India sales office. In 1993, yes, you heard it right. In 1993, he joined Nestle India and has worked in different business categories and locations across India, Indonesia, and Bangladesh. His last role as CFO of Nestle Bangladesh was a study in managing business growth in a volatile environment, which equipped him for handling the challenge of steering the internal audit function in continental East and South Asia region, covering 13 countries in Asia. What a personality we have today. And Sudipta, we are all ears. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Okay, so I will share my screen to start with the presentation. Just give me a minute,
please.
Please let me know if it is visible.
Yes.
Okay, so we are all good to go.
Good to go. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, Satish and Deepji, for that introduction. I really hope that I can do justice to the very glowing words that you shared about me. So without too much of delay, I'll go into the few slides that I have prepared to share with the community. And here I would share my perspective. My knowledge of internal audit is limited to my organization. And therefore, although a lot of perspective comes from how Nestle does audits, but the views here are my own, and it's not in any way related to the organization. So coming to the subject, of internal audit, I think the centerpiece is risk. I think that's where it starts from and where it ends. That how we can identify risks, how we can mitigate those with our recommendations and in a sustainable manner. Now, the mantra with which we practice internal audit in my organization is to give a risk-based objective assurance, advice, and insight to protect and enhance value. Now, it's a few words, but it's very loaded in my view. And every time I read it, it kind of rings a different kind of bell in my mind. So the first of all is, as I said, risk-based objective assurance. The key word is objective. And I think the part that we talk about objectivity is extremely important, and where it also stems from is the independence of the audit function. That's something that is very, very key to a successful audit function. The other aspect that I see here, and I always wonder, is we talk about assurance. But to my mind, internal audit is not just assurance, but this is assurance plus, and that is providing advice and a very strong insight to management, because we have to accept that we are traveling across the organization, meeting people, seeing various processes, and with that comes a lot of insight, which we need to bring to the table through our audits to senior management, so that if there is any corrective action needs to be made, we take those corrective actions. If there is any area that needs to be strengthened, we strengthen those areas. So it's assurance plus that we are looking at. And we cannot miss out the last part of that statement is not just protecting value, but enhancing value. And I will come back to it in my subsequent slides. So what I have done is I have structured the deliberation in four vectors. One is on the key principles to my mind. What are the basics? Just to start with that. I will take you through one of the audits or the structure and the approach that we do, so that the process can be explained a little bit better in a little bit more granular fashion. The third is the protection and enhancement of value part. Maybe we can just touch upon that. And the fourth one, and to my mind, the most important one, and sometimes we forget about that aspect, is people. Because whatever we say and do, we are as strong or as weak as the team or the weakest link in the chain that we have in the team. So basically, you know, we need a lot of enablement there, and we can spend a few minutes there on what we are trying to do to enable the team for us to deliver on what is expected out of us. So first, I come to the basic principles to my mind, and I'm seeing it in four levels. The first one I talked about is independence. Now, independence, not just of independence from the management of the organization, but we have enterprise risk management as a separate function. I think that's a separate discussion and activity altogether. Internal control, which would be a separate shop altogether. Although there would be very close interaction with each of these verticals, but I am a very firm believer of the lines of defense. You know, the first and the second remains different from the third, which is internal audit. And therefore, it is the independence has to be not just actual, but perceived. And I think that's a very, very important point that I have seen over the years, that it is not enough to be independent actually, but the organization should perceive it that way. And through our actions and through our interactions, that need to be demonstrated. And I think therefore it is very important that we live up to that independence aspect in our daily work methods, because people are observant, they spot out the compromises much earlier than we do, and therefore we need to be vigilant in that. The second is coming back to risk, and this is something that I will come back time and again in this deliberation, is we need to do risk assessments at multiple levels. First of all, when we are doing the annual audit plan, or maybe, you know, if you have a faster or a slower frequency of defining the audit plan. So that's something that we need to need to do a full risk assessment. And what do I mean by risk assessment in terms of what are the because our resources are finite, and therefore we will have to kind of make choices. And here I think the basis of making those choices is through a risk assessment. And when I talk of risk assessment, how do we do it? Because it sounds good, but in action, how do we kind of action that? To my mind, it would be a process of deliberation with various stakeholders in the organization. What is coming up? What are the risks in the horizon? What are the various regulations that are coming up which might impact our business? Which are the focus areas of business? Where is the business kind of asking us to focus? What would be the key management changes that are in the offing, and therefore, you know, can expose the organization going forward? So it is a purely deliberative process wherein we gather all information, and basis that we make choices on what are the audits that we plan to do. So that is the first level of risk assessment. Then when we are walking into an audit, let's say, an audit assignment, we do another level of risk assessment, but maybe at a more granular manner. When we talk to various stakeholders in the organization as to how the operations are shaping, whether there are any soft spots, whether there are certain concerns of management that we need to look at. So again, we are kind of drawing up on inputs of people, on how they feel about a particular aspect of an operation, and sharing with us the feedback. And to make this meaningful, people have to have the faith in the audit function, that it is an objective function, number one, and number two, it is independent. So therefore, they can approach the audit team and ask us openly and share their feedback, so that we can get a view on where we should focus our energies on. And of course, when we are doing this thing, it's not just feedback and deliberations, but the data analytics part come in handy here. And we do a very robust pre-audit before a particular audit, so to identify red flags. Because as I said, we might have a 3-week, 4-week, depending on the size of the operation audit. And in those 3 or 4 weeks, you cannot really do all. So you need to make choices, and therefore an appropriate and a good quality of risk assessment will help us to focus on which are the areas that we should focus on. Going a little bit deeper, and this one I will cover in the subsequent slide, is when we are highlighting an audit issue, at that point in time also we need to identify whether that's what is the level of risk of that issue that we are highlighting. What is the kind of action that we need to take to close the gap that is being highlighted by audit. And here it's again a collaborative process that we could do with the functions, be it finance, be it technical, be it marketing, with the various functions in the organization, to identify that with them, that maybe after our audit cycle, as to the risks that we have identified, and then a calculation activity can be undertaken with the functions to assess whether we were right in our judgment or not. Because that's very important, because it's not a that zero-sum game, as in you are always right. It's a learning process both for the team and for the function. Sometimes they don't see the side of the risk that we are highlighting. So it is up to us to highlight to them that, look, this is what we see as a risk. And also at times the business aspect also is kind of eludes us. And it is for us also to understand that aspect and work on it. So therefore, it's a two-pronged approach. The other thing, of course, it's very basic. It's a 360-degree operational review. And we'll have to also keep in mind that there are various other audit activities also being done. Maybe a safety audit happening in the organization, maybe a quality audit happening in an organization. And we need to be cognizant of their plan and for the plan for the year at least, so that we are careful that we do not overload the system. Because whether we like it or not, audit is a fairly disruptive practice to business. They have to stop things, or they have to kind of carve out time from their regular business activities to focus on audit. And therefore, we need to be cognizant of the fact that what are the other audits that are happening in the organization, so that there is no fatigue in that activity. Because at the end of the day, it's also a fact that audit is a value-adding activity. So in order to have a win-win, we need a little bit of coordination within the organization in the various audit activities that we undertake. And also at the end of it, we need to benchmark evaluation parameter in reporting. And that's a lot of words, but at the end of the day, what it simply means is that when we walk away from an audit, we should be giving a final judgment on how do we feel about the operations that we've just audited, or a process that we've just audited, whether it is good, whether it is a satisfactory level, whether it is not entirely satisfactory, whether it is bad. So we should have some qualitative comment on the overall picture, so that it helps management to focus and also kind of benchmark across various operations. Let's say we are benchmarking various factories, so we can management also basis our rating can focus on where they need to put in more effort to improve operations. So that could be one way of giving a simple tag to what has been our finding and what has been our impression from the audits that we have performed. And last but not the least, this is a management commitment, which is unrestricted authority and access to various records and data in the organization. And this demonstrates the commitment that management has put in the audit function. And as I always, with authority comes responsibility. So we have to be also responsible in dealing with this kind of very, very confidential information we are privy to or we have access to, and protect that in the way that the function would protect. So that's again a key enabler for the audit function in terms of the accesses. And also when we are walking away from the audit, we go with some recommendations, and it is also very important that those recommendations need to be followed through. So those are the four basic principles that I thought are kind of make up for the success of an audit team. Now coming to an example of an audit process, how do we deliver to enhance governance? So I've split it up into three parts: the pre-audit part, which I've talked about, the actual audit part, and the post-audit, what needs to be done. So in the pre-audit, as I said, I've highlighted these, seek feedback, data analytics, the red flags, and all these activities finally help us to enable us to focus where it needs focus, and it helps us also in resource allocation, because it's in today's day and age, cost is a big consideration, and the compliance has a cost, and also we'll have to be cognizant of how we are spending resources in terms of our manpower, and allocating resources in the way that is most beneficial to the business. And to help that, this pre-audit process is extremely important. Now, when we walk into an audit process, as I said, risk remains the central theme of what we do. There would be many issues, I'm sure, any operations that we do, and I have worked in operations for a long time. It is impossible to work without errors, and if you do not work and sit on your haunches, then you can avoid making errors. So you will make errors. That's not an issue. But what is the risk that we are exposing to the organization to? So that's the main thing that we are looking at. And when we are highlighting an audit issue, there are certain parameters that we are looking at, and I think maybe we can spend a few minutes here to kind of share with you all what is it that we are looking at. The first thing that we are looking at is what is the root cause, and there I think the key factor is the insight that the team brings in, and that we need to be very clearly mentioned in the report that this is a gap that we have seen, and this is the root cause of that. And if we identify the root cause properly, then it will help us on multiple facets. One is it will help us to close the gaps kind of on a sustainable basis. It will help us to frame a recommendation to correct that action in a business-friendly manner, not just a theory kind of a solution that we'll give. And also, as I said, sustainability is key, and sustainability of closure of audit gaps is also key. So, and if we can also have this thing of way of identifying the repeat issues in an audit, that also will help us to understand whether we have identified the root causes properly, because if you have identified the root cause properly, those issues will not come up, because the business is also not interested in opening up gaps. They are also interested in closing gaps. So it is up to us to identify the root cause. And I think that's the base of what we do. And we spend a lot of time identifying the root cause so that we can really add value to business. And as I said, it is always good to share when we walk away from the audit, to share an audit rating as to what we feel is a general impression of the quality of the operations, be it any operation or any process that we audit. And when we walk away from an audit, that's not the end, because there are certain activities which is there post the audit. I think first and foremost is on the recommendations that we have provided. we need to kind of track whether it is being implemented or not. We have a tool to do that, but yeah, I think that's very important for us to also assess our performance, that if implementations are being done on time, then as I said, the job is half done in terms of identifying the real root cause. And I think it is not just always that we give back to the organizations, we take back also. And I think we take back from the auditees a gift, which is feedback. And this is something that we are very, very kind of focused upon, is to on an anonymous basis, we seek feedback, and so that the mistakes that we have made in one audit is not repeated in the next one. And it's a tool for us for self-improvement. Critical report to management. I think that this is one of the key proof of the pudding, as they say, lies in the eating, and therefore the report is very important. And the report cannot run into reams and reams of paper. It has to be very succinct, to the point, so that we can get management attention to kind of read the report and make sense out of it. Because we have to be cognizant of the fact that they are diverting time from other business issues to read the audit report, and we have to be fair to the process to make a report which is precise, which is to the point, and which kind of highlights the key issue. Next point is on the audit committee. I think that's for listed companies. That is another stakeholder that we'll have to work with, and and therein transparency is very, very important. That we transparently share with the audit committee the key audit findings and what is our perception of the audits, and what would be the corrective action. And there is a process of dialogue with the audit committee is always welcome. And the last but not the least is, the knowledge should not be limited to an audit report. It should be widely disseminated in the organization. And this is something also that we are doing, so that the learnings from one unit can be then rolled over to the other, and people don't kind of repeat the same mistakes, because we are not there to write a report, we are there to close gaps. So that's something that we take it upon ourselves to share reports, the key findings across the organization, to kind of make people aware of this. So this is an example of what we do during an audit process. Very quickly on the value, we talk about value protection and value enhancement. There are, I think the most important part is prompt reporting. We cannot delay the reporting part. So that has to be very, very, this thing that, once the audit is done, we release the report. Second is, of course, we have to look at compliance. Compliance not only from the regulations of law of the land, but from internal perspective also, whatever the standards and processes and guidelines are there, we have to kind of ensure that we are complying with it. As you know, non-financial reporting is becoming very, very important, and especially in the field of sustainability, in the field of greenhouse gas emissions. So that is something that we are also picking up in our audits, and kind of ensuring that the measures that we are taking up in a sustainable, the organization has identified it for itself, is being done. The baselines are getting correctly reported. So I think this is something that will be a focus area going forward, because there will be a lot of focus. And I think over a period of a few years, the importance of financial reporting and non-financial reporting will be kind of equal. So that's something that we have to keep in mind and prepare the organization to focus here. Internal control gaps, yeah, that's a given. It's a no-brainer. Operational efficiency, and here we add a lot of value in terms of identifying efficiencies, identifying cost savings opportunities, and throwing it back to the organization to make the operations more efficient. And recently we have added the environmental parameters to this. Wherever we think that we can do better in terms of sustainability initiatives, we do highlight. And for this, there's a lot of training which is going on, because the team has to be kind of trained for this, to identify these kind of gaps. And therefore, this is one of the focus areas which has come to our attention recently. And of course, the overall thing is governance. We'll have to kind of ensure that the governance process is maintained and fostered, and the process improvements are kind of taken care of. So these are broadly the key labels with which we are identifying issues in an audit report. So for example, whenever we are sending the audit report, each issue would be labeled either it's a compliance issue or an internal control issue, or it's an operational efficiency issue, so that whenever anyone wants to see a view of what is the level of compliance that we have highlighted in an audit, so that becomes visible, and so as for the other pillars as well. So that's one kind of aspect that we have built into the report for the organization to use it and kind of analyze from there and to focus attention where it deserves attention. Quickly on the last part, but as I said, not the least part, what I said, we would like to be a trusted business partner. That's the endeavor. The foundation is is there. It's a given. Technical skills, communication skills, integrity part, that's a given. You cannot be part of an audit team without these things. But I think there are three key areas that we are focusing on, and it's very dear to my heart. First of all is insight. And there is no replacement, I would say, other than knowing the business, and that's why we need to train our resources. We need senior level interaction. We need to bring in experts and guests into the audit processes. Maybe they come in and work with the audit team for a few weeks, so that they share their knowledge and the audit team is getting enriched. We recruit auditors from business backgrounds also. So these are some of the areas that we work on to improve the insight part. And I think the other very important area is perspective. There is never a black and white in business. There is always different shades of gray, and therefore it is very important that we get the right perspective. And to get that, it's a question of exposure to the team members, and therefore we bring that exposure by letting the team work in diverse geographies, across diverse cultures, across different business practices. The way we do business in India would be very different from the way we do business in the US, let's say. And therefore, by exchanging team members, they kind of broaden their horizons, and therefore kind of add more value when they're doing an audit. And of course, information is key. So the window of letting in the knowledge from outside and letting out the knowledge that we have, and having an exchange of information and knowledge is key to enriching the process and improving the perspectives. And it is not easy process. We are for the team to go from one audit to the other, one after the other. It needs a lot of motivation to succeed. And to do that, I think they have to see value in it. And how they see value is career progression and also in recognition. So these are the two, I think, very, very important enablers that we can offer to the team for them to remain motivated and deliver on what we are asked to deliver and the ask from the organization. I think that's more or less what I had. A few thoughts, a few perspective on what I think we should be conducting internal audits. So happy to take any questions that you have.
Yeah. I think wonderful. Such a short, crisp, precise presentation, like you would make it to the audit committee. So there's so much of things packed into it that only a discerning internal auditor would make out that you have packed so much into such a short presentation. So anyway, let me get to one or two questions which are there.
Would you like to close the presentation? So that
yes, please. Oh, sure.
So I think, Sudipta ji, there's a number of questions. So I don't know, I'll pick one or two questions first. Two questions which come to my mind. One is, Nestle as a company, has a huge, robust distribution network in every nook and corner of the country. So a huge wholesale distribution network and, retailers and so on. So how does internal audit, of course, there would be other processes which take care of it. So how does internal audit look at those distribution operations, to gauge the efficiency and to ensure that there's no wrongdoing or revenue leakages in that system, because FMCG companies are prone to revenue leakages in the distribution system. So that's one. And associated with that question is that being a multinational company from Europe, you do you have any, when you talked about operational, when you walk away from a process, you have to comment on the process. How is that process, good, bad, or, how does it look? So do you have any, within the company, a rating system or a self-assessment system, whereas each process is rated in terms of, risk and controls and different questions, and then the internal audit also can look at it. So, these two things come to my mind immediately as I was hearing your presentation.
So on the distribution part, yes, it is never easy. And we are normally, when we are doing an risk assessment for the annual audit plan, we do factor in the coverage of certain areas in the distribution network across the country. And these are, of course, basis our experience, basis our dealing with the business, that we choose a certain sector or a certain geography to pick up. So we normally split it by geography and go in by geography. It is, these audits are a mix of data analytics and on-ground presence. As in 50% of the time of these audits is market visits, wherein we are going into the market, sitting with the distributors, going through their records, going to the retail outlets, understanding what are the schemes that are being passed on, whether they have got any the schemes that was designed to be passed on has been passed on or not. So and the efficacy of the controls there. So it is in various levels that we are looking at. And of course, there is a data to back up, because we have a secondary sales system which is rolled out across all distributors. So that's something that we also look at, and also our primary sales records. But most of it, I think, if you are to see the efficacy of whether the systems and controls are working or not, it is from these visits. And it is really this thing, I would say, rewarding when we go and speak to them. It is not just always kind of gloom and doom. A lot of good points also come up, and we share those good points across other geographies so that they can also replicate. That's one aspect of it. Of course, it depends on the sample that we draw of the areas that we visit. So there is certain guidances that we have on that, which has been developed over the years. It's not me, my predecessors also have kind of this thing, and every time we kind of fine tune with the current reality. And basis that we choose the areas that we want to visit, and try to see whether the controls and compliances are working. It is a kind of a dipstick check. For example, we have so many distributors, we cannot visit all. But when you are in the market and you're interacting with the sales team, with the supply chain team, you get a sense. And basis that you can kind of draw a conclusion, and basis also the findings that you are seeing on field, we can more or less be sure that, unless something totally rotten is happening in one corner, I think we follow 80-20, and we can give a reasonable assurance that things are working. As I said, it's not 100%, so you have to make choices. Does that answer the first question?
Yes, please.
Okay. So now going to the second on the performance this thing. So of course the function has their own performance parameters, their KPIs, which we are looking at. But when we are walking away from an audit, what I meant to say was that what is our perception, what is our impression of the operations, and that is something that we have developed globally on various chapters, as we call it, be it sales, be it marketing, be it quality assurance, be it production, for the various departments in the company. We have these kind of a rating matrix, which is on the one axis is this thing impact, the other axis is probability of that event happening, and basis our findings, we try to kind of plot each of these findings basis that, and then kind of try to arrive at a risk level. And if we see that too many high risk or critical risk areas, then of course, it's not such a good impression that we get. However, if it's okay, and normal kind of gaps which are there, then it's kind of okay kind of an operation that we. So basis that it is never such a straightforward exercise. I think it's a kind of a drives a little bit of method in the madness, because that gives us a kind of a basis to kind of to get a sense, because people aspect is something which you cannot put on a grid, and that's something that you'll have to judge being there on the field, and what is the how are they imbibed the organizational values, how have they kind of living it, those kind of things. Those are very subjective points, and somehow we kind of bring it all together, and then it's a process of deliberation at the end of an audit when we are imparting the rating, so to say.
Great. I think.
Yeah, brilliant presentation, Sudipta. Your 2 slides called the basic principles. You called it basic principles, but you said so much. That slide was actually shouting out so much of audit information if one goes through that slide very carefully. And also on the part that you, from that slide itself, I had so many questions. Actually, you said it all, but I just wanted a little more clarification. So I can't even call it a question. You brought out one aspect about overlaps. And I think in a large organization such as yours, these kind of things will happen because there are each responsibilities given to each function, and everybody wants to excel. Everybody wants to do so many things, sometimes far beyond the call of duty. So you also recognize the fact that there could be some overlaps. So can you just throw some light on how these overlaps, what are the kind of overlaps that can come very briefly, and how do you overcome them?
It's a give and take. As you said, each one of us are very kind of attached to our own set of objectives, our own set of deliveries, and we would like to do that. But finally, we identify what are the various audits that, or reviews, I would say, which are there in the organization. And what we do is when we do our audit plan, we share it with these people and they share theirs. And then we see what are the kind of overlaps and then try to match, because as a matter of principle, we never expose any unit to more than one audit at a time. And we give them a little bit of buffer, for them to kind of recoup and recover. They should also get some time to breathe. And therefore
audit fatigue is what we call it.
Audit fatigue. Yes, yeah. Yes. Yeah, so that's something that kind of is developed over the years, and I think it needs a little bit of maturity on all sides to kind of give way to each other, and because the objective is common, and that's something that we'll have to realize, that it's the same objective that towards which we are working.
Yeah, particularly, I really like that word you said. We are not here to write reports, but we are here to control gaps. I think that line says so much. Yeah, Deepji, I mean, you can go ahead.
What's the structure like? What's the structure of teams in India, whether it is a co-sourced model or it is done entirely in-house, and how does internal audit from India report back to head office? Does the head office auditors also come in at some point to discuss things? You did mention about the guest auditors, exchange of auditors. But at the same time, how does it work? What's the structure like in India, and then how does it report back to head office, and how do you get learnings from head office into India and India to back to head office and so on?
So the way we are structured is we are one team across the globe. Wow. Okay. So we have around 200 odd auditors across the globe in various countries, and India is one country wherein we have. So for example, in my span of control, I have one team in India, one team sitting in KL. And that's my span of control on those two teams, so that we are also kind of cognizant of the fact that we should not travel too much, carbon footprint and all, but all said and done, finally, we have to kind of balance the approach, and therefore what we do is we work together. The audit planning is a central exercise, wherein each region, as we call it, for example, I head a region. So each region kind of, we all get together to identify the risks at a global level and also at a local level, and then draw out a plan which kind of tries to harmonize and harness our efforts. For example, if you are doing a particular business audit, let's say in the US, we try to do a same business audit in another country, so that the two teams working in two different geographies kind of share learnings and during the audit, and so that we kind of learn from each other online, kind of. So so it's never a team in India. Yes, we have to respect the laws of the land, and therefore we are very, very cognizant of minority majority stakeholders. That's something that's a ask from whichever country is we have a listed entity. So that's something that is in a kind of grounded. That is something that we need to be aware of and respect. However, in terms of purely the knowledge and working perspective, we share a lot. When I said exchange, for example, I have a small team that is we have 100% in-sourced activity because the way the model works here for us is it is a training ground for talent. Okay, so from here people go across. It's normally a 4-year program on an average. When people come in, learn various aspects of business, and then they go back to business. So, for example, for me, I have come into this role knowing almost nothing about audit, and I feel a little awkward speaking about audit after working a few years working in internal audit. But yes, that is the structure that we have, so that we have a fair exchange of practicality and the business aspect coming into to audit. So so exchanging means people from India going to other markets to audit, people from other markets coming here to audit, so that they kind of get a little bit of flavor and texture of the business practices which are there across markets, and it's a brilliant opportunity to learn.
Sure. I think
one last question I had was on the rating, because you very clearly said that every audit controls with the rating. Is it possible? I mean, is it completely possible to do a mathematical or a quantifiable kind of a thing?
No.
And does a little bit of qualitative inputs also go into this rating?
Yes, as I said, it puts a method in the madness. So basically, it is providing us a structure so that we are objective to an extent. However, subjectivity do come in, and that is why with whatever rating we announce, it goes through a deliberation process by a couple of people who are not involved with the audit. Okay, so so therefore we bring that objectivity in it. Are we influenced too much with the hit and dust of the audit? Or are we totally being neutral and objective in the whole thing? So that's something that's that we try to bring in, be conscious of, that we are not swayed, but end of the day we are not robots, we are also human beings. We get swayed by the immediate past, and therefore to kind of do a correct conclusion, there are several factors that we take into. One is, of course, the feedback that we get, our impression on the people part, the value that is getting imbibed in that part of the organization, and then comes a neutral team of one or two who come in and see whether we are being kind of just and objective in the whole activity.
Perfect.
Absolutely perfect. I think a wonderful presentation, and I have this present duty of concluding this. So I've just noted down, as we are going through the presentation, I thought I should have sat with a notebook rather than just a single sheet of paper, because I thought I'll just note down with a single sheet of paper.
Very kind.
It was too much. If you can see this paper, it's full. If somebody can see this, I've jotted down from top to bottom, and I could not find place to jot down. But I'll try my best for this presentation to bring out a few, highlight few aspects which will be beneficial to the community, which you have presented very clearly. One is, we started off with saying that risk is at the core. So we have to mitigate risk to enhance value. What is coming out is to enhance value, not only to protect value, but to enhance value, which is very important. Value addition is the key. independence, not actual, but also perceived, because, people are watching you. So, it's important that it's being perceived by everybody, by your actions, by what you do, how you do, and so on. The pre-audit part, you talked about using data analytics and also doing, pre-audit cycle, doing some analytics, working in-house so that you reduce the cycle time. And of course, you ensure that there is no overlap with the function when you go there. Work with other functions, quality and others, to ensure that, there is less hindrance to the auditees, to the business processes where you go. 360-degree operational review. Again, you have parameters, quality rating, which when you report, you go back to quality rating so that you do. And again, the words you use were method to madness, of course, because it cannot be absolutely black and white. It has to be shades of gray. So, try to bring some method to madness. So you move from subjectivity to objectivity. So I think the scale which you talked about, the rating which you talked about, brings some objectivity. Again, what is coming out is a learning ground. So, this internal audit is a learning ground for talent, where you put in 4 years, 5 years, a stint here, and move on to operational areas, so that this becomes a great, in-house function where you nurture talent. So that is there. I think what is coming out again is, you talked about developing insight for your internal audit team, developing perspective, and ensuring that they are motivated. So, these three things, very important for any internal audit function per se: developing insight, developing perspective, and motivation. And what is relevant and good for you is that, being a multinational company, you can expose talent to geographies, different cultures, which we feel, Satish and myself, we feel is very important to develop a good perspective, develop a good, insight into any process, or to understand human beings, and that exposure to different cultures and geographies really helps, which is, in your case, is a given, because you have entities across the world. Again, you said, there is a cost to compliance. So there is an acknowledgement that there is a cost to compliance, and we need to do more with less, which was coming out very clearly. Audit findings widely shared, not only with the auditee, but, it goes in a database. It is shared across the world, shared with other entities, so that people take benefit of that. It becomes an educational tool. It becomes an awareness tool. It becomes a value-add tool. It becomes a tool for enhancing value across the world. So I think that is coming out very clearly. Importance to non-financial reporting now, slowly moving away from financial reporting. Of course, financial reporting would remain critical, but moving to non-financial reporting. And of course, it's closing the gaps, closing the gaps. You're talking about, and ensuring that you add value and not only just report on the internal control thing. So I think such a lot of things which you talked about, very relevant for the internal function. I would have missed out a lot of things, because as you presented each slide, each sentence, there are so many things going on at the back of the mind based on, what we have seen in different geographies. But I think an excellent presentation, a lot of to-dos, a lot of takeaways for the internal audit fraternity. So from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of Sama Audit, on behalf of Satish and myself, I thank you for being with us and sharing these snippets, these processes about internal audit for the last 40 minutes. So thank you very much, Sudipta Ji. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.